Hello, I'm Anne Clark. I'm here today to speak with my dear friend Damien Wills, who's just written a book called The 3 Desires, Discovering Your Spiritual Purpose. And I'm really looking forward to asking him some questions so that we can all learn together as to why he's written this book. So great to see you here, Damien.
Hi Annie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
So Damien, why did you write this book, The 3 Desires, Discovering Your Spiritual Purpose?
Okay Annie, there's a couple of reasons why I wrote this book. Firstly, for the first 15 years of my life, I spent a lot of time in work that I really wasn't well suited for, and was quite depressing in many ways. And I started off leaving school wanting to be an airline pilot, and I actually thought I'd discovered what I wanted to do for the rest of my life very early on in my life. And then at around the age of about 23, 24, I had a bit of an early midlife crisis and realised I didn't want to be an airline pilot. Then I took quite a few different roles and different jobs over the next 10 to 15 years. And in this time, I felt quite stuck in work that was really wasn't meaningful, it wasn't nurturing my spirit. And while my outside life was moving along nicely, I got married to my soulmate, I ended up having 4 kids. My actual work life itself was bringing me down. So I spent a lot of that time researching, reading a lot of spiritual books and motivational books, trying to reconnect with God, which I felt was missing in my life. And from that I learned what my own purpose was in life, and finally had the courage to leave that unrewarding work to follow my purpose. So there's two aspects to this. Firstly, I knew that while I was stuck in this work, there were a lot of friends and family stuck in the same position. And I meet these people every day. Now I'm doing work that I love. So I've got this passion of trying to help these people get out of the same rut that I was in for such a long time. And part of my calling or purpose is to help people reconnect with God and to reconnect people with their own purpose. So that led naturally to writing the book. And yeah, here we are.
So what are those 3 desires?
The 3 desires, I chose that name because we all have these 3 desires living here on planet Earth. Now, the first desire that we're all born with is a material desire. The material desire to be fed, okay, for shelter, for oxygen, as we get older, for friendship, to find a partner, a life partner. So these are all what I call it like a natural desire that's ingrained with our DNA that God has designed for us since birth. Okay. Egoic desire is to do with the ego. So it's the desire of the ego. So I want to feel successful, okay? Wanting to be popular, and we can talk a bit more about the ego later, but that's what egoic desire is all about. Now, in the book, egoic desire, I look at not being a positive thing, okay? So we're trying to reduce our egoic desires. And lastly, we look at, in a lot of detail, is the spiritual desires. Now, this is a desire that's been is with us even before we're born. It comes directly from God. Each of us have our own unique spiritual desire, and it stems from our spiritual purpose. So some may call it a calling. What is your gift to the world? Okay. So once you discover a gift, you can enact that gift by following your spiritual desire.
What will the reader get out of this book?
Well, firstly, it's a roadmap. That's what the book is. It's basically a roadmap for anyone who's feeling stuck where they are in their life situation. Now, it may be a job that they hate. It may be a business that's out of control that they're not happy with, or it could be anything else. It might not even be work. Okay, so it's a roadmap from getting where they are to finding their life's purpose. So part of the major issue I see with individuals I meet every day, and myself included for a large proportion of my life, was this feeling of feeling lost, knowing you have something to contribute to the world, knowing you have these gifts and abilities and not being able to use them. Okay, so it's this sense of frustration. So this book will help them, first of all, discover what their gift is and discover their spiritual purpose, and give practical advice on how to integrate that into the world.
So Damien, I'm fascinated in this egoic attachment. Could you elaborate a little bit more about why it is a hidden curse?
Well, first of all, let's look at the ego. And well, it's not my definition, but a good definition of the ego is that, for instance, let's look at the story of your life. For instance, you might have grown up in a loving family, your parents helped you foster your love of art, and he becomes the artist, okay? And that becomes part of your story. Where the ego rears its ugly head is when you start believing that the story of your life is who you are, okay? So, I am an artist, right? No, you're Annie, a spiritual being, you're not an artist. That's something that you just do, okay? So, a large proportion of society have confused themselves and believe that the story of their life becomes them. But it might not just be, for instance, an artist. This egoic attachment can move on to physical items. And I'll use an example in the book, an important one is housing. So you see it all the time, people who strike it rich. What's the first thing they go and buy is a big expensive flash home with 20 rooms and 10 bathrooms. And basically firstly it's a status symbol saying, look, I've made it, I'm successful, but it's also an extension of their own ego. So it becomes this sense of this is a part of who I am, okay? So where it becomes a hidden curse is when you're trying to discover your spiritual purpose. And the example might be, for instance, you may be a successful investment banker. Now over this period of say 15, 20 years, you become very successful at this job, okay? Everyone knows that you're a successful banker, you might be wealthy because of it, earning a lot of income, but the reality is you may hate this job, okay? And you may have this calling, for instance, to be a teacher. Now a teacher doesn't pay nowhere near as well as an investment banker. It may not seem as exciting to a lot of people. So for your ego to relinquish this image of you being a successful investment banker could be too hard for the ego to do, okay, if you're heavily attached to this image of who you are. So in that respect, the ego becomes a very big stumbling block to discovering your purpose. So a large part of the book is trying to, how can we reduce this ego so we can really listen to the quiet voice of God and have no roadblocks helping us move forward to discovering our purpose.
When I was reading the book, I discovered that you spent 2 years without a vehicle while living in the city. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Just after my wife and I got married, we moved to Brisbane, and I worked in the city at the time at one of these jobs I hated. And we decided, we did have a car prior when I was flying up in the Northern Territory. We decided to get rid of the car and see if we could survive for a while without a car. My wife wasn't sure it would work. At the time she couldn't drive, so it wasn't too much of an inconvenience for herself. But yeah, it was wonderful. It comes back to that simplifying your life, you know, the simplification and taking away all the stuff that it's not required. And the car at the time wasn't required. Yes, at times it was an inconvenience, but you know, living in the city, you can walk to most places. It was a lot healthier. Didn't have to worry about the car breaking down, because at the time I couldn't afford a good car anyway. And yeah, it was interesting because a lot of people would look down on you thinking, what's wrong with you? You know, you're in your mid-20s and you're married, you should have a car. But yeah, it worked well for 2 years. What changed was that we did have a child, and when children come along, unfortunately complexity creeps in, and it's very hard to live that simple lifestyle when you have children involved. I'm sure it's possible, but we found it too hard. But if you don't have kids, I can honestly recommend getting rid of the car if you can.
Or getting rid of the kids.
Wow, yes.
Oh, that's excellent.